Hello, you all. This is Chef Megan from Edible Schoolyard, New Orleans, and it is Cinco de Mayo. Every year at Green Charter School, our third graders have a huge Cinco de Mayo celebration with their teacher, Miss Serta. And Cinco de Mayo is a celebration in which Mexican people celebrate their heritage, their traditions, and their country. And so we are going to make a dish that is definitely Mexican in origin, and that is salsa. Since the third graders are the people who usually are enjoying the big Cinco de Mayo celebration at our school, I'm going to cater this towards them. And so that means that there needs to be a little bit of prep done because our third graders use butter knives. So the first thing that the adult or an older student is going to want to do is slice up limes for our third graders. And we can just cut them into fourths. Or if you have more kids at home, you can cut them into smaller pieces like this. So then we have our limes. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut a few slices of red onion so that then our third graders can come back with their butter knife and cut them into dices. So we're just gonna do a little bit of this. Usually a little red onion goes a long way. We can always come back and do more. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is take our jalapeno, and we wanna get this ready for our third graders. So we're gonna cut the end off. If you have gloves, feel free to use them. It's always a smart idea if you're dealing with spicy peppers to use gloves, but I'm just gonna use my bare hands, and then I'm gonna go wash them as soon as I get done with this really well with soap and water. So we're gonna cut our jalapeno in half, and then that white, the ribs in there and the seeds are what are super spicy. And so we are going to get rid of that by using our knife and just kind of cutting around. Be very careful. Again, if this is a middle schooler doing this, make sure you're being really careful. If you have a smaller paring knife, that would probably even work better. So we're gonna do this, and we're just gonna take it and pop it out into the trash. I'm gonna kind of use my knife to scrape off those seeds or even kind of just knock it against the trash can. And we probably only need half of a jalapeno. Again, we can come back, taste and adjust later, but I'm just gonna do this half, put this one aside, and now I'm gonna go wash my hands. So you may have noticed that there were no measuring tools at the beginning when I showed you what tools you needed. So this is a recipe that you are going to adjust to your liking. I'm just going to give you some estimates of amounts that you should put in, but then it's up to you. Right now I'm just going to show you what needs to be done with our butter knife. So I got grape tomatoes from the store because they were on sale, and I think they taste better. They're nice and red and sweet. You can use regular tomatoes too, whatever you have available, whatever you like. Now, with a butter knife and cherry tomatoes, the bad thing is that this is one of the most challenging things to cut with a butter knife. So you want to make sure that you are sawing back and forth like this and not just trying to squish it, because what is going to happen if we squish is it's going to go everywhere, possibly all over you or your friend or your sister or your brother. So we are going to try and chop these with our knife into little pieces, probably about that size, maybe even a little smaller if you can. So again, we want to make sure we're sawing back and forth using the tip of that butter knife and then cutting it into little pieces. And we want to do maybe a pint of these, maybe two, depending on how much salsa you want to make. The next thing that we're going to cut, and I always like to wipe off my cutting board before I'm going on to my next task, especially with tomatoes. They're so juicy and wet. We don't want to get everything else all wet and gross. So the next thing we're going to do is our red onions, which have already been sliced by an adult or an older student. And we can just go like this, kind of like cutting the rainbow up a little bit, or we can take these more separately and practice that. Gather up 2 or 3 and then cut them in those tiny little dice. And again, probably 2-3 slices of the red onion is gonna be great for this. Okay, so those are our 2 first things that we need our knife for. Our last thing is our jalapeno. And again, remember, this is spicy. Might even want the older kid or an adult to cut it into strips, but if not, our 3rd graders can do it with a butter knife. It just means that you're holding the jalapeno more, and we really want to be careful that we're washing our hands. So then you have your long strips, and we're going to cut that into tiny little pieces too. So this is a good opportunity to really practice our fine motor skills and our really careful knife skills. This is one of the smallest dices we are going to be able to get. Okay, so I ended up just using 1 pint of the grape tomatoes, and it made about this much salsa, which is all I need. So our next step is going to use a couple lime wedges. We're just gonna squeeze these in. And like I always tell the kids, you are more than welcome to try this, but only after you squeeze into the bowl. Please do not lick it and then squeeze it again. So 1 or 2 squeezes of lime. Stir it around, and then we're going to take cilantro and we're going to pick and just add it to the bowl. Alternatively, and it depends on how big your cilantro leaves are, these are pretty big, you could pick them off and then either use your chef's knife or your butter knife to kind of make them a little smaller. No one really loves huge chunks of cilantro in their salsa, so put that in there. Or you could just take a branch or a sprig and just tear them more small. Okay, the last thing we're gonna add is some salt and pepper, and I would do a pretty fair amount of salt, pretty fair amount of pepper. You can also add other spices if you would like cayenne, chili powder, cumin, gives it a nice Mexican flavor, but that is up to you. The jalapeno will probably make it spicy, so you may not need cayenne, but what I would suggest is tasting it, adjusting your spices, tasting it again, and like I said, the flavors will meld together overnight in your fridge. So if you're making this ahead of time, give it that time and then taste it and then adjust your seasoning then. So I hope you all have a super great Cinco de Mayo. I encourage you to do a little research on the holiday, a little research about Mexico. Check out some pictures. It is truly a beautiful place. Have a